Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering Superman. Warner Brothers Discovery is being sued over the international rights to Superman. This right now is interfering with their international release. It's hard to believe this could happen, but it's happening. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. Warner Brothers is being sued over the international rights to Superman, threatening the upcoming film's global release. Not domestically. They're okay domestically, they've got the rights domestically. But international is a pretty big place. It's literally the rest of the world. The lawsuit was filed by the estate of Joseph Schuster, who co-created Superman, claiming Warner Brothers has been exploiting the character without legal rights. The estate alleges that Warner Brothers lost the international rights to Superman years ago, but continued producing films like Zack Snyder's Justice League, Black Adam, and Shazam, utilizing the rights of Superman without their permission. The lawsuit seeks to block the Superman film's release in key markets like Canada, the UK, and Australia. DC Studios plan to use the new Superman film as the cornerstone of their DC universe, led by James Gunn and Peter Safran. I'm a big fan of the Warner Brothers Discovery team. I like what they're trying to do. I like the people operating it. They're very, very sharp, but I don't know how they missed this. This is a big miss. I liked how they got James Gunn involved. I like how they got Peter Safran involved. Safran is a very talented, money-making producer. I just can't fathom how this took place. I know it's a surprise, but you have to anticipate every surprise, especially with a major launch. I think the problem really is that James Gunn has never run a studio before. Certainly, he's never run anything of this kind of size and importance, and he and Safran are running this studio together. Safran also, he's had some successes, but maybe he just wasn't prepared for this kind of responsibility. I do blame Warner Brothers for this. They should have seen this coming. And the way you deal with something like this in advance is you go and you reach out to the potential troublemaker and you build a bridge with them and you invite them to the premiere. Because if you don't build every possible bridge that you can build, if you don't cover every potential problem you can have, someone's going to see an opportunity and they're going to take it. And that's what's happening here. Superman's legal battles date back to 1947, with multiple lawsuits over the decades challenging DC's ownership of the character. The estate claims that under UK copyright law, they regained international rights to Superman in 2017 due to the 25-year termination rule after Schuster's death. A 1992 deal between DC and Schuster's family, paying $25,000 annually, is central to the legal dispute, with questions over whether Schuster's sister had the authority to make the agreement. And $25,000 a year, including all rights, is not significant. It's not enough. It's not appropriate. Now, if they sign it and the deal is done, it's one thing, but there are international courts you have to consider. There are different rules in different countries for different markets. And this definitely is a problem. Warner Brothers responded by calling the lawsuit baseless and pledged to defend the rights aggressively in court. And that would have been fine if it wasn't tied into the release of this film. There's no time for this kind of response. They're going to need to write a check, and they should write it quickly. Because ultimately, they are probably going to be writing a check. And they may as well get it over with. The lawsuit, led by high-profile copyright lawyer Mark Toberoff, seeks both financial compensation and an injunction against further exploitation of Superman internationally. The story first came out at the end of January 31st. I didn't cover it because I assumed, this is going to get resolved within a couple of days, but it's not yet been resolved. And there are more and more people talking about it, so we're going to have to get into it. I'm really disappointed that Warner Brothers hasn't nailed this and just made this lawsuit go away. From The Hollywood Reporter, Warner Brothers Superman rollout threatened by lawsuit over international rights. And in an even more high-end copyright law kind of interpretation of this, from Puck.News, David Zaslav's new Superman has a big legal problem. The founder of Puck News, Matt Belloni, is an entertainment lawyer, and he knows the field well. This is not a small problem for Warner Brothers. This is a serious problem. Copyright nemesis Mark Toberoff is looking to block Warner Brothers' summer blockbuster from taking flight in key international markets, but the consequences of his lawsuit could be legal kryptonite for other studios too. Why would this affect other studios if it's about Superman? And obviously that's not a Marvel kind of thing. Well, because it sets a precedent and it's dealing with international markets. And it might not affect Marvel, but then it could easily affect Paramount with respect to their Star Trek rights. Let's check it out. The lawsuit claiming Warner Brothers has lost foreign rights to the Superman character could affect much more than this summer's planned relaunch of the franchise. Of course, most of the headlines about the case have centered on the ramifications for James Gunn's anticipated July 11th tentpole. July 11th, it's just a couple of months away and they have this coming up. Incredible. Superman is intended to jumpstart the studio's revamped DC universe. But the complaint filed by longtime Warner Brothers nemesis Mark Toberoff could be legal kryptonite for other studios too. If Toberoff prevails, the estate of Superman co-creator Joe Shuster won't be the only one to take advantage of the fact that in territories excluding the UK, Canada, and Australia, 25 years after an author's death, copyrights revert to the estate. If Toberoff wins, could Paramount be forced to reassess its overseas control of Star Trek, given that creator Gene Roddenberry's death in 1991 is far outside the 25-year window? What about Disney's global grip on Planet of the Apes, whose creator Pierre Boulle died in 1994? Meanwhile, Universal faces a ticking clock of its own. The 25th anniversary of Bourne Identity creator Robert Ludlum's death is March 12, 2026. Legal observers are also overlooking how this new Superman suit could threaten the international distribution of older movies and TV shows. In the US, when an author or their estate invokes copyright law's termination provisions to reclaim rights to their works, the studio is allowed to continue to distribute previously produced movies and properties based on those works. This is known as the derivative works exception. However, it's not clear that the same principle is recognized elsewhere, meaning, for example, that if Toberoff reclaims Superman rights for his client, Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav could run into trouble distributing the company's entire Superman library internationally, everything from the Christopher Reeve classics to the Smallville TV series to Dwayne Johnson's Superman-adjacent Black Adam movie. Toberoff, as entertainment lawyers know, has made something of a career out of trying to wrest Superman rights away from Warner Brothers. More than a decade ago, an appellate court appealed to end his quest, but one should never count out a highly persistent enemy. He also has a broader history with Warner Brothers. 2 decades ago, he persuaded a California judge to halt the release of a Dukes of Hazzard movie, resulting in Warner's forking over a $14 million settlement to his client, a producer of the 1970s film upon which the original TV show was based. More recently, he got himself a producer credit on Warner's Beetlejuice after sending a copyright termination notice and negotiating a deal. He's now looking to add to those successes. Could Warner Brothers have not just retained this guy so he wouldn't have been chasing them on this latest release? He may have been offered something and not accepted it, I don't know, but certainly yes, I would have offered him something and said, hey, why don't you consult us on potential liability with respect to any of our intellectual properties? Just give the guy $1 million, $2 million, something like that. That might have been enough for this guy. So at least if the family was going to go after Superman, they wouldn't have had this guy to use, because this guy's apparently quite good at getting money out of Warner Brothers and tying up releases. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Toberoff's latest gambit is that it's also novel. You'd expect someone to have tried this before, but there doesn't seem to be much precedent on how movie rights square with the so-called Dickens provision, the automatic 25-year authorial rights reversion inspired by a penniless when he died Charles Dickens, which is now written into copyright law everywhere from Ireland to South Africa. While there might be reasons, for example, Canada only recently extended its copyright term from 50 to 70 years, altering the cost-benefit analysis of pursuing reversionary rights, the unprecedented nature of the situation indicates that this probably won't be an easy or straightforward case. Frankly, that'd be so even if the Superman rights didn't already have a complicated legal backstory. Back in 1938, Shuster and his writing partner Jerry Siegel, without the benefit of legal counsel, sold the rights to their fledgling superhero to Detective Comics for $130. Shortly thereafter, Action Comics #1 rocketed Superman into the cultural stratosphere, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, detailing his origin story and many of the character elements that would become iconic on TV shows and movies decades later. But despite Superman's ubiquity during their lifetimes, both Shuster and Siegel would die with little in their bank accounts. Upon Shuster's death in 1992, his widow sought Time Warner's assistance to settle his debts. The company increased an annual stipend from $5,000 to $25,000, while extracting a promise that she wouldn't pursue a return of Superman rights. Warner Brothers thought it had a deal with Siegel's family too, but in 2001, Toberoff, the same lawyer who's suing them now, showed up claiming expertise on a then esoteric slice of copyright law that allowed heirs to terminate copyright grants decades after signing. Toberoff disavowed any prior settlements and sparked a legal slugfest that lasted 12 years. By 2008, Toberoff appeared to be on the verge of a landmark success, with a federal judge declaring that the Siegels could reclaim rights to any aspects of the Superman character that appeared in Action Comics #1. A few years later, though, Toberoff was on the defensive, with Warner Brothers countersuing him for torturous interference, alleging his motives were profit-driven, even surfacing what had, until then, been a secret partnership with super agent Ari Emanuel, as the two had set up a venture called IP Worldwide, expecting they'd soon be the exclusive licensor of Superman rights. That never went anywhere, but they remained friends. As recently reported, Emanuel referred Elon Musk to Toberoff to take on Sam Altman, because Elon Musk is suing Sam Altman over OpenAI. Yet another story. That storied legal battle all but concluded in 2013, when the Ninth Circuit affirmed that the agreements made by the Siegels and Schusters with Warner Brothers prior to Toberoff's involvement superseded the original 1938 deal, thus re-granting Warner Brothers the rights to Superman. There were some issues left on the table, but everyone was exhausted from a dozen years of combat, and the litigation wrapped up quickly thereafter, seemingly for good. Now, Toberoff is taking pains to explain why this lawsuit sequel isn't just a retread. Clearly, he's gearing up for Warner Brothers to argue that this ground was covered ages ago, and paint him as vexatious. But Toberoff is preemptively striking by emphasizing that courts explicitly stated that the parties weren't resolving foreign rights in the previous litigation. Moreover, he notes that foreign reversionary rights could not be exercised until 25 years after Shuster's death, rendering any agreements his widow made in 1992, before an estate was even set up, irrelevant. However, Toberoff may be putting the cart before the horse, though. For starters, Warner Brothers will contest being hauled into a New York federal court to adjudicate global rights. After all, if Israeli law had something to say about rights reversion, shouldn't an Israeli court weigh in? The same logic applies to Australia, Hong Kong, and India. Thus, Warner Brothers' legal team is likely to challenge the jurisdiction, questioning whether an American judge even has the power to enforce an injunction halfway around the world. Down the road, a court might address whether Shuster's widow inadvertently relinquished any future claims that her heirs could have on Superman. While there's a scarcity of reversion cases involving movie rights, there are precedents such as the 2016 decision by the UK High Court that denied Duran Duran the right to reclaim publishing rights to its early songs, which might offer Warner Brothers some hope that a contract could supersede anything else. Reaching that point, however, could require a protracted and expensive journey. You have to wonder if his neatly packaged case in New York, demanding a declaration of global rights, is his low-budget attempt to pressure Warner Brothers into a swift settlement. He's already told the Wall Street Journal he wasn't looking to deprive fans of Superman, but rather to seek just compensation for Joe Shuster's fundamental contributions as the co-creator of the character. And you have to admit that does sound reasonable. Toberoff has brokered numerous deals before, securing those producer credits on sequels to Beetlejuice, Bad Boys, and Predator. He's also struck a significant deal with Disney a couple of years back when he seemed poised to disrupt the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If Zaslav decides it's simpler to cut a small check and give him a nod in the end credits, it would not really be so surprising to see this one wrapped up with a handshake between a studio and its longtime nemesis. Toberoff might even get invited to the premiere. This is a lawsuit that should not be happening. This should have been settled and agreed to already. If they're paying $25,000 a year to the family of the co-creator of Superman, I'm sorry, that's really not enough money. This is supposed to be the launch of a multi-billion-dollar film franchise. They could pay a little bit more money. I have no idea how well the Superman movie is going to do. I am disappointed it's also not really getting buzz right now. Films that don't get buzz don't tend to do very well. But come on, at the very least, call the guy up, make a settlement, make sure there isn't a lot more media on this, and get this thing resolved. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, become a paid member of the channel today.